Yeah, hi, it's nice to have you here this morning. My name is Eshomomoh Imoudu, and good, like I said earlier, to have you again today. Now, we shall continue the discussion from where Yori Folarin stopped yesterday. Now, looking towards the 100 days of the All Progressives Congress, APC, national government led by President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, the presidency insisted on Tuesday that President Buhari did not promise Nigerians that he would achieve specific things within his first 100 days in office. Now, some citizens had berated the presidency, that is the government, and the APC for denying that specific promise were made during electioneering campaigns as to envisage achievements in the first 100 days in office. Now, our focus is to discuss and examine the journey so far, highlight the milestones and changes are observed. Now, to do this, I have two Nigerians and keen observer of the polity. Now, one is a lawyer and social commentator. He is by name Chris Nwaokobia Jr. Nice to have you join us today.
My pleasure to be here.
And just sitting next to Chris is Akinwale Omoboriowo II, the second. He's also an energy expert. Nice to have you join us today.
Good morning, Eshomomoh.
Okay, and let me start this way. Listen to what I said during the intro, and I said 100 days of the President Buhari and the APC government in Nigeria. Now, Chris, let me just start with you. How will you assess this government the last 100 days?
The first thing to note, if you ask me, is the fact that I'll start from your statement about the APC possibly denying the count, as it were. I want to say that Mr. President never really, and commit himself to spectacular feats in the first 100 days. What he did say was that he would do his best to hit the ground running. He would do his best to fix the country within logical space and spate. And then he did say in the United States of America, if you remember, and interestingly, that was on most of the TVs yesterday, but on network, where he said that he would, a certain young lady asked him whether he would commit himself to particular feats within the first 100 days. And he talked about the fact that within the constraints of resources, he will do his best to ensure that Nigerians understand that it's going to be a new regime, a new tendency, a new proclivity in governance, and that there obviously will be hope in the horizon based on the certain and definite steps that he will take. But be that as it may, I want to say that just about a month ago, I saw the British High Commissioner in Nigeria talking about how he has never really seen a government hit the ground so effectively in so short a time. And I want to say that advisedly, if you look at how things are moving and what is happening across the country, you will obviously, without fear of querulous critics, say that the first 100 days of President Muhammadu Buhari has been profound. I say that advisedly. The first thing to note is that in terms of anti-corruption, there is a rejigging of the battle and the fight against corruption. In terms of electricity, I remember that 2 days ago, the PAMSEC of the Energy Power Ministry did say that he would maybe gauge it as miraculous that from 1,300 megawatts about 3 months ago, we have about 4,816 megawatts. That's magical. And it is not so much about what but it's about the sound bites. It's about the body language of a new regime. And I want to say that whether we like it or not, you will have a new party on the other side that is not used to opposition. So you will find them make outlandish claims. I say that now that change is here, now that the new sheriff is in town, the tendency across board is profoundly salutary. The civil servants are getting to work early enough. People are sitting up. Funds are being remitted to one account. The country is waking up to the reality of the now.
Now you are reeling out what some call the achievements.
It's a monument. It's a monument. And I think that for 100 days, it's a fantastic scorecard.
Okay. Let me just go to Akinwale. 100 days of the president. Yeah, some argue that he made specific promise, and the president have said, "Look, we didn't make specific promise." But I don't want to bother us. I don't want us to bother ourselves with whether there was a specific message that within 100 days. Let's take a look at. We have a government in place now. Would you say that between when this government was inaugurated and now, there has been significant changes in the system?
I would say, thanks so much, Eshomomoh. I'm not a political commentator, so I would not comment on what promises were made. I'm a practitioner in the energy sector. And with all due respect and without prejudice to those that believe that you should measure a nation in matters of days, I would say that 100 days is insignificant in the history of a country. In the sector, in the power sector where I'm focused and where I participate every day, Chris just mentioned that in the power sector, recently there's been a major milestone of attaining over 4,800 megawatt of electricity. The sector itself is on course in terms of heavy regulation. It's privatized. The sector has been driven, not just way before President Buhari, right from President Obasanjo, when it was decided that the private sector should take leadership in how utility, specifically electricity, is delivered to Nigerians. And that the private sector is better empowered to manage this sector more efficiently. And there was a roadmap set up. President Yar'Adua came in, he improved on that roadmap. There were some hitches. Eventually, President Jonathan did implement that roadmap. But the law itself that governs that sector was enacted in March 2005. You have a strong regulator in NERC. So I would say that in infrastructure business, 100 days is non-existent. Infrastructure business takes time. Electricity, particularly electricity, you can't compare that to telecoms. You're dealing with waves. Here you're dealing with hard poles, matter. So I would say that 100 days is too short to measure anything. But do we see consistency? Yes, we do. I remember reading on the internet, and I was in the UK, when President Buhari was in Washington. And he made a very strong statement about his keen interest in the power sector. Without electricity, you're not even part of the modern community. Over 60% of Nigerians still burn biomass. A lot more rely on diesel. I would say that we should not trivialize the effect of lack of electricity by measuring in 100 days. So my statement would be that over the past 3-4 months, there have been some challenges in the sector, but there have also been improvements. And so we need to keep that going. I would not say for or against, but we have a president in place for 4 years. We as Nigerians have given him the mandate. We as Nigerians in the electricity sector need to do our best to ensure that that mandate, in terms of improving the standard of living of the people, is realized. And it's not about opposition or no opposition politics. This is about lives. Without electricity, people are dying every day in hospital.
And incidentally, I listened to the AFDB President Akinwale, the man who just the former Minister of Agriculture, and he was saying that, look, he is going to ensure that he's going to drive the issue of electricity also in Africa, because if you're going to talk about developing Africa, moving Africa to the next level, we have to tackle this aspect of electricity. And I know even to this government, electricity is key. If I went on the street yesterday to do some interviews and just find out from the people what they feel about the government in the last 100 days. And all they were saying was, look, I now have constant power supply. Now, some persons have said, yeah, that there was no investment by this government, per se, in the electricity sector. But other people say, yeah, there might not have been investment by this government, but the posture of the government ensured that, look, saboteurs no longer have a field day in the system like they used to have. Now, it's one thing for government to massively invest, and it's another thing for the government to encourage, probably by the body language, encourage saboteurs. Now, How would you say that this government has encouraged the kind of growth in the generation we have and the distribution we have so far?
I'm not an expert in that sector, but I thank God for information, and thank God you have an expert here too who has concurred with the fact that, as it were, there is sizable improvement in that sector. From 1,300 megawatts to 4,800 is monumental. But I do sincerely think that, just like your question connotes, there is the effect of a body language of a new sheriff. Oh. There is the effect of the commitment of leadership to ensuring that the energy sector, the power sector is improved. And almost always, some people would want to say that, oh, those investments were by President Goodluck Jonathan. But you ask yourself, why weren't those investments effective and effectual before May 29th? Was it about timing? Was it about the body language? Was it about sound bites of the new regime? And I think sizably is about the sound bites of the new regime, because you had 5-6 years to get these things on track. And those people, like the energy PAMSEC said, they had a lot of sabotage. And that was because governance appeared like a bazaar. That was because the government and governance was lame with respect to effectively ensuring that people comply with set rules and regulations. But now, as you and I talk, what is profoundly important to note is the fact that everybody is willfully or wistfully, or either by direct government action, everybody's getting up to work. And that is sizably important and interesting. I believe that as this government ages, as it moves on, that you will find out, because Mr. President has said that they will invest monumentally in that sector and ensure that the energy sector is well handled. And the reason simply is because the party predicates its manifesto and its action and governance on a tripod. The first is anti-corruption, the second is job creation, and the third is national security. And you cannot create jobs if you don't have power. Mm-hmm. That's fundamentally important, because over the years you find out that Dunlop and several other big companies had to move to Ghana and several other neighboring countries because they had problems generating electricity. And like you noted, if you go out to the streets now, what you hear, I hear my friends call me on the phone and say, when last did you buy diesel? You know, and that is salutary. Business is definitely going to come back on track, and funds are being saved. And you ask yourself, there appears a major magical contradiction of sorts in our economy. You find out that the price of crude oil is dropping in the global market, and on the one hand, foreign reserves is growing. And simply, it had to do with leakages, corruption, and the likes. And now that the new sheriff is putting everything together, I do sincerely think and believe that there is monumental hope in the horizon. And about that 100 days, I think I agree with my brother, short time, but you know what is profoundly important to note? In 100 days, Nigerians are beginning to develop amazing faith and hope in their enterprise. And in 100 days, our rating in the Committee of Nations, Nigerians are proudly putting their passports online and saying, I'm proud again to be Nigerian. And then you see when the Secretary General of the United Nations visited a few days ago, he stretched out another invitation to Mr. President to come to New York for a UN meet. I think that once again, the pride of the people in the green, white, green, the pride in the eagle, the pride in our beautiful coat of arms is growing again. And sizably, Nigerians are grateful to a sheriff that believes that Nigeria must soar again.
The sheriff, and I hope we're not going to change the title from president to sheriff. Okay, let me just come back to you. Yesterday I was on the street, like I said earlier, and I interviewed a young man who said he was a businessman and was selling generators, and that after a while we started having steady power supply, that he realized that the patronage of his business kind of declined. And I asked him that, now that you're a specialist in selling generators, and obviously, like you said, Nigerians are no longer buying like they used to, what happens to you? Are you going to continue in that business? He said, I'm thinking of moving I'm saying this because just yesterday, the Vice President also talked about how they want to invest massively in social security and also help to alleviate poverty. Now, on one hand, we're beginning to have the rise in power generation. There were those who took a livelihood in selling generators that may not make the kind of money they used to make. Now, how do you think we can improve power supply and also create an alternative for this one so that they also have a place to fall back to in the system?
Nigeria is a very blessed country. Amazing resources, vibrant citizens. When you make power available and it becomes an exception to have blackouts, economic activity will rise. Change for a businessman and also as an entrepreneur, change is a constant. You need to be able to move with the time. If one business fails, certainly others will prevail. My take is, if you're selling generator, we are independent power producers. That's what we do. We invest massively, and the vision of our company is to light up Africa one community at a time. Not 10,000 megawatt in one location. And charity begins at home. So for us, if you say to me, for example, that Nigeria is well lit up, there's no room for an independent power producer, we'll simply take that business model to other countries, as an example. And you can move sectors. So I would say that when you have thriving economic activity, when the cost of production significantly reduces because of available, competitive, reliable power, you will have multiple engagement, positive opportunities. So I would say that there's no loss, there's no harm done for those that would lose business from selling generator, because remember, by selling generator is misfortune. You're making money out of misfortune of the people. Why would you want to do that forever? Why would you want to reap where necessarily you shouldn't sow? So I would say that if generator as a business bust, and it should, and it will eventually, find other business. Remember, when you're selling generators, what you're selling is machinery. And a lot of people don't understand really what they're doing. You're not a generator seller, you're a machinery seller.
You're a machinery seller.
You're a machinery seller. If generator becomes obsolete, sell another machine. Pepper grinding machine, for example.
Which also depends on this power that has improved.
Everything depends on power.
Now, Chris, let me come back to you on we talked about sabotaging the efforts of probably previous governments. Now we go through a process in Nigeria whereby the power generation goes up, and after a while it comes down. I even had I think the Palm Circle or whoever was saying that, look, that we should pray that it will be sustained, because we still have some elements in the system that might want to, probably for political reasons or for whatever reason, to sabotage efforts of government. Now, how do we, or how can the government ensure that, look, we don't fall below this capacity so that Nigerians keep enjoying this, and it's not as if there's a situation that will just last for 1 month, maybe after the 100 days or after 2 months, we fall back to ground zero. How do we sustain that the efforts of saboteurs in the system are crippled?
I think that whilst making public the feat in the energy sector, and making known these fears, the PAMSEC did say that there has to be security and protection of the facilities, so that there is constant gas supply, there is sizable commitment to duty and the likes. And what we must note, if you check it, across the country, there is a commitment to improving national security, and that's at the heart of it. You know, you see the effort in the Northwest to tackle cattle rustling. You see the effect of a reprogrammed and a strategic effort at stemming insurgency and terror in the Northeast. And then you find out that the armed forces and the security agencies are up and doing about ensuring that the activities of vandals in terms of the pipelines and the gas lines and all that is taken care of. I think that it must be a continuum, you know. The activity of vandals must be checked effectively. They must be treated as national sabotage. And then the tendency that we had in the past where everything was blamed on the weakness of the security agencies should not exist. A government should not look for people to blame for the errors or mistakes or ills of governance. Government must take responsibility for whatever happens within the space. I think that was the error of the past. You find that people were too willing to blame opposition, blame political sabotage, but the buck essentially stops at the level of leadership. And so I think that with the new era, leadership understands the enormity of responsibility that it holds, and they have committed themselves to the fact that these facilities must be protected. There must be constant supply of gas. And interestingly, the PAMSEC also noted that in no time with the regular and the constant operation of these facilities, they will hit the 5,000 mark. I believe that I've been taught by reading to see the cup as half full, not as half empty. And then the great Buhari'S once said that hope is the last milk in the human breast. I believe that the faith that the Nigerian people have today will resonate in ensuring that at every structure and every sector, commitment to making this country a great enterprise, a workable entity, will not abate. And so I believe that government, beyond rejigging the security sector, beyond enforcing regulations in the energy sector, beyond pumping in funds, there is need for a new regime of nationalism, if you like, patriotism. We must own this country and own our facilities as our collective patrimony. When we do that, everybody at every level will commit him or herself to ensuring that this country works. I tell you, when America was challenging John F. Kennedy about services, he made a popular quote. It remains a quotable quote for all times. He says, "My fellow Americans, do not think of what your country can do for you, but think what you can do for your country." And I think that that's the challenge of the now. At every
have we gotten there?
We will get there, and we're getting there. Because let me tell you why I'm positive about where we are now. Where we are is such that on the airwaves, if you listen to TVs and radios, you see callers asking Nigerians to play their role. Much as you expect Mr. President to do so and so, you have your responsibility.
So
I hear questions like, do you throw water sachet into the gutter? 5, 6 years ago, it wasn't a popular practice. But now people are saying, play your role. And I think that the success of this regime must devolve on this twofold practice: the leadership and the led. There is a responsibility that is incumbent on followership, and there is another that is incumbent on leadership. Leadership must be responsible and responsive to the people, and the people must ensure that not only are they going to be critical of leadership, but they must play their role as citizens of the enterprise.
Okay. Well, just taking a look at it from the international perspective, you deal on the private sector, and what is the best practice in the way of us protecting our infrastructure? I'm talking about the aspect where we keep having the issue of pipeline vandalism and all that, and that you don't have enough gas going to the power stations because some saboteurs are there and all that. Now, how do we ensure that, look, what we currently have, what we're generating is protected and it gets to the destination without the activities of some forces making sure that, look, those things are not provided? What are the best practices that this government can begin to adopt? Because we also learned recently that they're thinking about, talking about security and all that, talking about using drones to monitor our pipelines. Now, what other ways can we ensure that, look, everybody is co-opted into this, and we have the modern machineries in helping to secure all this infrastructure we have?
Yeah, thanks, Eshomomoh. I mean, I'm not a security expert.
I know. But if you have investment, for instance, how do you protect your investment?
I would say that I would again lean on what Chris said: collective ownership. Today, do you see yourself as a Nigerian, or do you just see yourself to exist in this entity called Nigeria? This pipeline that you're vandalizing, you cannot touch the gas. Once you vandalize it, it goes into air. This gas goes to power plants to improve lives, including the lives of the vandals. Do they understand that? I don't know. I don't know who these vandals are. But it's a security issue. And I'm sure in the energy ministry, power ministry, you have Ambassador Gali, consummate professional. I'm certain that they will have studied various options on how they can secure these pipelines. You mentioned drones. That's a great idea. But these pipelines, they run the length and breadth of the country. Beyond manning it, you're going to need maybe thousands of policemen just to stand guard on the pipeline and wait for the eventual misbehaved individual. But if there's more collective ownership of national assets, if there's a sense of belonging, this is our country and this is our asset, I think in the long term that has better value beyond just co-opting men and equipment in managing those pipelines. But the issue goes beyond just gas pipeline. I think on the upstream side, there's the issue of gas production. In actually feeding this gas into those pipelines, bringing the molecules out. Flaring is still a big problem. And the biggest elephant in this room today that encourages flaring is right pricing. So are we living in fool's paradise? We want gas for free, whilst we're paying an enormous amount of money for diesel. So could we pay more or less, for example? Investors must be able to amortize the investment. They have to make returns. These are all very noble ideals. If I don't get return on my investment, I will not take the risk. So should we consider and should government look at right pricing critically? I think they should.
So right pricing as in, what do you mean by
the gas
the
tariffs?
Right pricing now?
The gas tariff. For example, the gas master plan envisages...
Okay, we'll come back to the issue of the gas master plan. Let's quickly go on this commercial break. We'll be right back. Please do stay with us.